everyone. Welcome. Welcome to our weekly book study. Thank you for taking the time to be here. It's just, it's so refreshing to look at the content in this newest book that we're looking at, Atmananda Krishna Menon. And it's my pleasure to invite a new co-host to our team this week. This is Jim, and Jim, thank you for agreeing to be a co-host and being in our book study, just everything all at once. And maybe tell us a little bit about your background, and then we'll get started.
Okay, thank you. Well, for me, I'm just sort of a quick little thing here. I had a pretty big breakthrough experience in 1968 with LSD. I'll go ahead and say that. But I had already started meditating, but then I got initiated into TM and got definitely quit doing drugs and psychedelics. And from that point on, it was like regained my true nature. And I went to India in 1970 and with Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, became one of the early teachers of TM and was the first resident TM teacher in Austin, Texas. And then I moved to LA and I wanted something more rigorous. So I got on a path called Sant Mat or Radha Swami. And I did that for 19 years. I was getting up at 4:30 every morning and trying to meditate for 2.5 hours. So 7 days a week. I did that for 7 days a week, 19 years. Then I really had a great opportunity. I spent some time with Thomas Keating, Father Keating, who developed centering prayer. And I led a centering prayer group in an Episcopal church in LA, Beverly Hills, for about 8 years. And in the early aughts, I just started regarding myself as a free agent. And this has sort of been my world. Now, when I was in business, I kept all this in the background, you know. Now I went 4 decades at least without me saying, and I took LSD. You know, that was all stuff you didn't talk about for a long time for me. But here I am now, and I sort of, now I'm realizing that I really like the direct approach. The Dzogchen Buddhist, I understand the idea of you get it, and then you integrate, normalize, stabilize. And even though I've sort of done the progressive path, I like the direct awakening path, if it can even be called that. So,
yeah.
That's
Thank you, Jim. That's an awesome introduction. And Jim's last name is Jim Gillette. He's on the schedule, the co-host schedule, and we have a similar background. I mean, LSD was, we didn't speak LSD when we were business owners. Didn't tell our customers that we had a previous life of crazy land. But it's become popular to have psychedelics in your background now, even though I don't recommend it. I think the progressive path is a gentler approach. LSD might get you in trouble if you're not careful. And also, I like the idea, and this is just me, I like the idea of entering the understanding of consciousness, of our true nature, in a gentle way and in a natural way. I think it might be easier to relax back into it if it's not if it's not pushed, or if it's not done by some kind of synthetic thing. That's just my thoughts about it. But welcome, and we're looking at the Discourses. This is week, let's see, we're looking at Discourses 21 to 30 this week. And I'm really looking at this. I mean, each week I look at the content and I go, oh my God, this is so good. And then you read the next week and it's like, oh, it keeps going. deeper and deeper. And one of the things I loved about Atmananda immediately is how practical and how plain his answers to his questions are. I mean, for the most part, some of them are like, huh, wait a minute, I need to read this 10 times to get what he's saying. But most of them are very practical answers, and they drop in. What would you say is your you have a starting place you would like to begin, Jim?
Don't we just start with the first reading and
We can, yeah, we can.
get going?
Yeah,
Okay, but I'll just give a little commentary. I also feel like, we could just take 5 little paragraphs and spend an hour or 40 weeks on that. I mean, he really gives you a lot just right after another, and offers a lot of ways, different angles to look at it. And some of it is bound to sort of land, and then gives a place to contemplate. So I like, he's very direct and packs a lot in.
Yeah, you're right. We could spend all day on one paragraph.
Yeah.
But let's look at it this way. This seems to be working, and if we don't cover all of them, I'm happy to. We can. You can make your comments on the chat board, and we can have a special special Saturday where we cover ones that we want to. But let's look at number 20. How are objects related? Is 20, right?
I think
How are
21.
objects
I think
related
you
to
said
me?
21.
Did I? Oh, okay. How to retreat into the real I principle. That's right. We ended on 20 last week. The question is, Atmananda, how do we retreat into the real I principle? And
You want me to read? And
what would you say stands out for you with the answer to that question?
Well,
you can
I like
you can read one of his comments if you want, or a paragraph.
I'll just start reading. What do you mean when you say I? It does not at all mean the body, the senses, or the mind. It is pure experience itself. In other words, the end of all knowledge or feeling. I mean, that one right there contains such a distinction that I mean, it almost like, I agree completely that it reflects how I approach this. And that I would just say that. So anyhow, to go on, first of all, see that the body, the senses, and the mind are your objects, and that you are always the changeless subject, distinct and separate from the objects. And the objects are only perceived when they are, or the objects are only present when they are perceived. But I exist always changeless, whether perceptions occur or not, extending through and beyond all states. Thus you see that you are never the body, senses, or mind. And then he says, make this thought as deep and intense as possible until you are doubly sure that the wrong experience will never recur. Now, for me, I'm going to say that he's pointing to the pure subject that we are, the awareness that includes all of the, objects of perception, the feelings, the sensations. Now, I got a little stuck, and I recognize everybody has a different way how this might work for them. But when he says, go deeply, what does he say? Make this thought as deep and intense as possible until you are doubly sure. Now, I have a little resistance to that. I mean, my thought is, he's suggesting you work with a thought and make it real deep, and so that if anybody reads that and then tries to make it real deep or tries to make it become real sure, then to me, I think that you're almost setting up a part of your mind to go against the easy recognition of your own, pure subject state. And so the idea of to be sure, I sort of approach it to be not sure. Don't be sure, because it's impossible to be sure. So that's I had a reaction on that little part right there.
Right. Well, the wording, I think, could be mistaken, and as you say, cause an opposite experience. So the mind picks it up that's on the spiritual path and efforts it. And the language now, and what you hear Rupert's, how he speaks of relaxing into, and there's no effort involved. But I do like the answer to this question. The very first sentence, he says, "What do you mean when you say I?" So he's restating, he's kind of focusing in on that question, on that word I, and then he's giving steps of recognizing it. First, do this. First of all, do this, and notice this, and notice this. And so he's giving a sort of a prescription on how to know when one is established, and I thought that was really cool. And then he says in what you just read, thus you see that you are never the body. So he's giving instructions of how this establishes a different way of seeing.
Yeah, I like and this is what he continues to do throughout, is give maybe an expanded or a slightly different word description of what is, and encouraging one to recognize that within oneself. And so that's the approach I see here. And we continue through this. He uses different words to point to I am. And I enjoyed reading it and sort of recognizing, and as we'll read, peace and happiness and non-identification with any thoughts or sensations. So, yeah.
And for someone that is, that really wants to you could sit with this one discourse, and you could have it as an experiment, as a practice, and you could kind of use it for investigation. I think it would be amazing.
Yeah, I do too. And I really am in the camp now that I like experiments. That's what I like about Rupert Spira. He talks about all of this beautifully, but he also gives some really nice experiments and pointers. And for me, that's what it's all about these days. It's not just sort of understanding or agreeing with or, thinking you have it. It's like, what does it point to? And do I have that experience?
Yeah. And everyone, I mean, I don't know that every mind is open to investigate, because a lot of people say, I interviewed Gangaji, and she said, some of my closest friends, they come and listen to me and they think, what are you talking about? And they just leave because they're just not interested.
Yeah,
there has to be a true interest, I think.
I do too. I think early on, most of us realize we can't talk about this just out in open society or try to convince anybody. If it comes up, it's wonderful to share, and then it really gets interesting, but yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
It's almost like talking about LSD. It's like, no, I can't talk about pure awareness. I am nothing. It's hard to say that out there.
Yeah, isn't it funny that we're in our I'll be 70 soon, and we're at an age where that doesn't matter. You can,
That's right.
you can be your authentic self. You're not trying to protect anything. You can
Yeah.
just be who you are. And those old experiences, of course, most of us know that are this age bodysuit. That was just a crazy time. And,
Yeah.
teenagers do crazy stuff, and so do young adults. And it's nice when you can talk to people that are in a frame of mind that they can look back and see maybe even the benefits of some of the, if they're still alive, you can see some of the benefits of those things.
Yeah. Yeah. When I was in Austin, and here we are talking about this, but in 68, when I did this, I was living in a commune, but all of the men in we got a boarding house that took over the place. We were all graduate students in psychology, and we had equal men and women, but we were really into examining this. And back then we were doing sensitivity training and all these ways to awaken up to new levels of awareness. So it was crazy times. And yeah, like Alan Watts said, once you get the message, you hang up the phone. So pretty quickly, I wanted to get off relying on, substances and integrate it into my life in just a natural way.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. I see the chat is kind of anxious for us to keep going with the book.
Okay.
So Atmananda at the top of page 11 says, next, examine if there's anything else that does not part with the I principle. In other words, he's giving the other step in this step process. Even for a moment, yes, and he describes that it's subtle. You can tell that it's a subtle. There is consciousness. It never parts with the I principle and can never be an object either. And I like in the next paragraph where he talks about it is universally admitted that one loves only that which gives one happiness, or that a thing is loved only for its happiness value. Evidently, happiness itself is loved more than that which is supposed to give happiness. It is also admitted that one loves one's self more than anything else. This made me think of Donald Trump, because he just loves himself. If he was a spiritual student, man, he would be at the top of the chart.
Yeah, I really like that observation that the happiness is really what we're going for. It's not the thing that makes us happy, it's the happiness. And then he ties it in with recognizing that is what I am. I am consciousness, and I am also peace and happiness. And so once you link that up, it's a real good reason to identify with and become your own true nature. Yeah.
No, Paul, it wasn't Donald Trump here. It was an example of someone that loves themselves. Now he's taken the egoic route of loving who Donald Trump is. But what Atmananda was saying is it's the same energy. It's just directed to the ego. That's what my meaning on that was.
Yeah, I can't read these comments fast enough as we're talking, but for me, it's based on what was just said. It's really important and I didn't do this for a lot of years. I didn't think I was seeking happiness, but to recognize once you have even a glimpse of the peace and the happiness and the I without an object, boy, that is a big motivation to keep doing it more and more.
Yes.
It's a great reward for going within.
Yeah. Well, at the bottom of this page 11, Jim, there's a paragraph here that really caught my attention. He says, don't be satisfied with only reducing objects into consciousness. Don't stop there. Reduce them further into the I principle. So also reduce all feelings into pure happiness, and then reduce them into the I principle. when you are sure that you will not return to identification with the body any longer, you can very well leave off the intermediaries of consciousness and happiness and directly take the thought I subjectively.
Yeah.
I think that's a really important end to what could be. I mean, I suggest anyone that doesn't already know this as a direct experience that you play with that as your own experience, because he's giving a formula or a practice that really is meaningful and deep.
Oh, absolutely. And I like that right after what we were talking about happiness, is that I haven't really been seeking happiness all these decades in my own mind, my interpretation of what I was doing. But he's saying here, you go beyond peace and happiness. You actually want to just find I as a subject and then containing everything else. But then you notice that I am peace and happiness. Then it sort of becomes a self-fulfilling. I mean, it has a loop that, throughout the day, you want to return and notice the subject I consciousness, dwell in that if you can, glimpses, a lot of sharp glimpses. And then you start noticing the peace and happiness just is there, so yeah.
Yeah. It's revealed in that quiet awareness.
Yeah.
It reveals itself, and it all of a sudden it has this visceral, direct experience.
Yes.
Yeah. And I see some questions on the chat, and we will get to your questions in a few minutes and your comments. So thank you for that. Let's move to page 12. What do you see on Discourse 22, Jim, that caught your attention?
Well, right off the first sentence, the word I has an advantage of taking you direct to the core of yourself. So that's what we're talking about. And I mean, just one sound, one word, one thought is sufficient to contemplate. And of course, some great teachers have recommended that, just be I. But what does that mean without objects of perception? Just here now, I. So right off the bat, that's something that strikes me. But he goes on to say, by reducing objects into consciousness or happiness, you come only to the brink of experience. Reduce them further into the I principle, and then it, the object, and you, the subject, both merge into experience itself. And I think it's so helpful to have a teacher like this point that out, because then it gives you something to really notice, that you're not only just returning to a state of no thought, but now it includes everything. And the I and everything are all one thing. So by these teachers, in this case, Atmananda, is pointing out that it goes beyond experience of anything outside of ourselves. We merge into experience itself, not into an understanding or a lot of thoughts, but it's a pure experience. So that strikes me. And they says, thus, when you find that what you see is only yourself, the seeing and the objects become mere empty words. And that this is where I like group discussion, because everybody has a different way of coming into this, I think. I've heard a lot of people describe it different ways. But that sense of expansion, in one sense, you're almost going back to the core. And then on the other hand, you're expanding out to everything. So it's really neat that he brings that up, and it's an object of contemplation.
Yeah,
So,
for sure. And someone on the chat board mentioned, Sandra had a question. What does he mean by reduce? He uses reducing a lot, and how would you describe that, Jim?
Reduce them further into the I. And he's moving from consciousness and happiness. And so the movement, if you think you're contemplating consciousness or happiness, or you're examining it, when you reduce it, I think he's suggesting to make it even simpler and make it a one only, because once you reach the one only I, it contains everything. You already recognize that you stand as consciousness. You're not the objects of consciousness or the thoughts that run through your mind. And you're not, the happiness is something that goes along with it. But I think reducing it means return further to the pure I, and contemplate that and examine it. I don't know if that helps, but that's the way I would approach it.
Yeah. That sounds reasonable. I mean, it almost sounds like now move your attention to the awareness of the object. Now move your attention in consciousness to consciousness, and allow that object to be reduced. It's automatically, and I think the word Rupert might use would the divesting. It divests. It reduce or divests back into that I from which it arises.
Yeah. Thus, when you find that what you see is only yourself, excuse me, once you see that, then the seeing and the objects become mere empty words.
There it is.
Yeah.
It's kind of what we both said, and in trying to answer that one question. So that's a really great question. And let's see, I'm just looking at the chat here. It says, can we add the word absolute to your list of synonyms? Oh, wait a minute. Rick is answering. He's got a lot of answers that he's adding to people's questions and such. Thank you, Rick. And then Jude, I think that answers that question, right? Yes. Withdraw your projection. That's good, Lynn. Thank you for that. Yeah. Good.
Yeah, that's like going back into the source.
Yes.
Move from the movie on the screen back to the projector, or just be the screen.
Yeah.
But
move to the screen, move to that which never changes.
Right.
Which is always there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
So
what else on question 22? What is my real goal?
Where's that? Oh,
that was the question. What is my real goal? The I principle.
Yeah, the I principle. I think he's and by the way, whoever wrote, can we include the word absolute or whatever? What I see is that so many words can be used, and all they can do is represent pure experience. And so definitely you can say ground of being, the absolute, awareness of awareness. It's all, and as I suggested here, the I principle. And it's not even a principle, it's I. It's just now. Yeah. And so all the words can work. And I don't like getting caught up with one person saying it one way and another person says it another way. Let's see that we're pointing to the same thing. Yeah.
It's I just is too many words. Go there.
I like funny. That. Yeah.
At the top of page 13, Atmananda closes that discourse with, when a Yinanan or when a sage takes to activities of life, he or she comes out with body, sense organs, or mind whenever he or she needs them, and acts to all appearances, like an ordinary man or woman, but knowing full well all the while that he or she is the reality itself. This is not said from the level of the absolute.
Yeah.
I thought that was a very interesting last statement.
What popped into my mind when I read that was that, and one that I love, the Zen saying, first there was a mountain, then there was no mountain, then there is a mountain. So when you're discovering that it's all illusion and it's not really what we think it is, the mountain sort of turns into an illusion. We're looking and going, whoa, what I thought was a reality is not. But then it comes back, and once again, you're just a regular guy. You've seen that there is no mountain, and then you operate as if the mountain is there. Maybe you want to climb up it. But I mean, that's what popped into my mind, because he says, when the sage takes to activities, that it goes back to chop wood, carry water.
Exactly.
I mean, it just gets regular again, ordinary. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. We're on exactly the same page with that. And I can see that many would agree that the same. I really like that. And also, one of the things that I'm enjoying from Atmananda is the descriptions of the levels of understanding are like levels of awakening, where and then when the I principle is established, then everything else comes in. Your life comes in. The sage is the activities of life; they all come in, and the play of life occurs even for that one, just like Ramana Maharshi.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like the way he keeps coming back to experience and the real I principle. It's a purity that includes everything. But that's part of the process. And as you described, you said it's like levels. It's recognizing I. What we've already talked about is recognizing the I, recognizing it, if we want to use a word like it, as consciousness and happiness, and then reducing from consciousness and happiness into I, and then recognizing its pure experience, not anything that's contained in words. It's I, it's now. And it's like, you're right, the space or the no thing before you even utter the word I,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In 23, the question is, what is meant by natural state?
Yeah, that actually, I thought that's where we were. I would call it, I should see what he says here. But to me, when he says what you call experience is the real I principle. And I'm going to say that's the natural state. I say, what does it mean? Yeah. Here, you can never become conscious of an object unless you are self-conscious, beyond the realm of the mind. So that's pretty hard to do. As a concept, it's almost impossible. How do you go beyond the mind, with the mind? Well, you have to give up. And then you come back to something that's a deeper reality. But he says, you mean you're conscious of the knowledge of the object, further reduced into knowledge alone, and again reduced in the subject I principle or experience itself. This means you're always in your real center. And I think that's what we've been talking about this whole time.
Yeah.
It's coming back to, I mean, we're going through the layers of recognizing there's peace, consciousness, happiness, and yet you come back to the pure core, the pure center.
Yeah. And it's hopeful. And I feel that these discussions, these kinds of discussions and content focus that we're having allows one to get a sense of that deeper understanding, so that there will be a time when you will be established, as the pointing suggests.
Yeah. I think that's what I'm starting to see is this progressive path. In one sense, it can be like what it takes to get to where you reside in the pure center or core. But after that, it never ends. My experience is that this path is no longer a path, it's the pathless path, but it's how do you integrate, how do you keep, and that's why I enjoy hearing everybody's different views of it, is get little inklings, and then it might help you notice a different aspect, but it helps me normalize, stabilize, and
Right.
make it my regular life. Yeah.
Right. That's why, even though we're on a book study, and I like to stay strict, somewhat
Oh,
strict, to a movement through the
yeah,
book study and not
yeah.
all these stories. But I also like to have little snippets of someone else's, like yours, or like Jenny's, or Susan's, uh, uh, normal experience of accessing these ideas and embodying them in your own experience. So I think that can be helpful. Let's look at 24, Jim.
Okay. Svabhava
Oh, I'm
means
sorry. Can I go back? I underlined and put 2 stars on this paragraph, that last paragraph. Atmananda said, so even when you say you are conscious of an object, you mean you are conscious of the knowledge of the object, further reduced into knowledge alone, and again reduced into the subjective I principle or experience itself. Oh, you read that, didn't you?
Yeah, I read that. I
Okay.
liked it
Yeah.
also. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And I would just comment that the word knowledge, and I think further on, he changes it into knowing. It's not like knowledge, it's knowing,
Yeah.
which to me is closer to the pure experience that
Yes.
he refers to.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree. Okay. Let's look at 24.
Okay. So,
How do you say that word?
Svabhava. Svabhava
Okay. Good.
means
All
one
right.
whole
You're no
real
better than
nature.
me, for sure.
Yeah. All activities like perceiving, doing, are asvabhava, the opposite of one's real nature.
Right.
Svabhava is knowledge without object, or happiness without object, or without cause. Happiness without cause. So for you are knowledge itself, or happiness itself, and cannot know anything else. I mean, that's getting very basic.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
And go ahead, Jim.
you actually transform the thing into knowledge. At the moment of knowing, you realize yourself, in fact. Knowing a thing means you absorb it into you. Similarly, loving a thing also means you absorb it into yourself. Hence, knowing and loving actually destroy all illusion, all separateness. And I would say that if you are in knowing or loving that state, you've eliminated the object. And I think that's what he's saying, is that you destroy all illusion, all separateness. If you can recognize yourself as knowing rather than the object of what you think you know. So that's what I got that.
Yeah. That's kind of like, what falling in love really is. It's
Yeah.
eliminating the person as a separate self object. And then, of course, you come back and pick it back up, and then you end up in divorce court. Not always. I'm only kidding. Anyway, that's very good. That's where you actually do, and this is, I think this is the deeper direct experience of being established in the truth, being established in this understanding is you're not separate. You're no longer separate from other beings, other people, other objects of experience. You begin to enjoy all of the form and the formless, knowing that it's all one thing.
Yeah, this is to me is part of the transformation. I think a lot of people, myself included, I first started noticing this more like walking in nature and feeling one with the trees and the birds. But then you start noticing it's with everything, other humans. It's all me, but not the me, Jim, but all I am. And that everything arises out of that, great recognition. Yeah.
Yeah. What is the end of an ignorant man's activity of knowing?
Or Vedanta, the end of knowledge. I never knew that Vedanta meant that, but I love that. And that's like earlier when I said, I sort of got stuck on the word sure, because I don't think you can be, being sure with the mind is not the same thing as being the one that knows in the state of knowing, rather than knowledge, like, well, I got it now. I understand it now.
Yeah.
It's like, it's a knowing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what he says here. In every perception, you are there as that, and that alone. All the mischief of wrong identification is done only after the event.
Well, that's when the body mind comes and takes credit for everything.
Yeah.
I did that. Yes.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. You need a sense of humor. I find, at least for me, a sense of humor, because we're talking about this, but for me to feel sure, I understand it, I'd rather not know. I feel more free when I can admit that I don't know. Now, I'm throwing in some extra stuff, and some people were writing to stick with the book, but these are all distinctions that I'm drawing from what we're reading. So
yeah. The let's see. It says in 27. We'll move to 27. I cannot be liberated by knowing my existence aspect alone. Why?
that's interesting. Yeah. He says both the Chet consciousness and the Ananda happiness aspects have also to be known. You must also know that all these three are one and the same, and that is your real self. Thus, transcending the three aspects, you reach the reality beyond. According to Vedanta, the reality can be expressed only by negative imports, because it is nameless and attributeless, but it expresses itself in all names and forms. Well, that just contains so much. We could spend an hour or a day or a week on that one right there. So he gives us attributes, then he says you must go past the attributes, but then he says you don't really get it unless you acknowledge the attributes.
Right.
And that all of that is still you or we or I.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's just speaking of the negating aspect of identifying what you're not, so you can know your changeless identity, the changeless identity of I, and then you go back, and because all of that is also you.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so let's look at 28, and then we'll take a couple questions. And if anyone has anything you'd like to raise your hand, please do that, and we'll bring you on if you have a question or a comment that you would like to add. This is a good one here, man. We could spend the rest of the day on this one. 28.
Right. right.
How to reconcile. How do I reconcile the spiritual and the worldly aspects of my life, Atmananda?
Yeah. This is the whole thing. The world is examined and proved to be non-existent through your own experiences. By comparing impartially the dream and waking state experiences and finding them to be exactly similar, that is so beautiful right there, because when we sort of recognize that what we've been calling reality is still like a virtual reality, almost like the dream state, and that what we are is sort of, these are aspects of our projection, what we call dreaming or waking. But that's a big one for me, is like when we start having that, like, wait, what I've been calling reality is still like what I used to call dreaming, you know? I'm
Yeah.
in it, but not of it.
Well,
Yeah.
and then I think there's a important point made in number one there, because the waking state experiences, the and the dream are exactly the same, might tell us, don't get caught up in trying to figure out what your dreams mean.
Yeah. 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 Um, I know we're supposed to be sticking on the book, but I will just say that Maharishi used to tell us that a reason for not believing your dreams is because as you're releasing stress, either in meditation or deep sleep, uh, little parts of all kinds of stress release will come together and form a narrative. And so a dream is releasing maybe from a lot of different parts.
Right.
And it's no reason to get too caught up in it. Let it
Right.
go, become
So,
more free.
Jim, when you were with the Maharishi in India, were you at the ashram there in Rishikesh where the
Yes. Yeah.
Beatles landed in
Yeah, I was
'69?
exactly the thing. Wherever you see the Beatles in India, yeah, I was right there. Yeah.
You were there then?
I was there in 70. I think they were there in 68.
How much time did you spend there?
About 3.5 months.
But did you go in those dark little bunker things underneath
Yeah,
and
I,
sit in
I,
darkness for
it,
periods of time?
I was up to about 12 hours a day in meditation. And I tried those little huts, and the vibration was so intense that I found it a little difficult. Or I call it vibration, whatever it was. It was like pressing in on me. So I just went, and I lived in a tree house. They built, first I lived where we were too crowded in a part, and then they gave me a little treehouse type thing. I could go up steps, and it was a little dwelling up in the trees. I'd watch the monkeys and the langurs out the window, and we did rounding. By the way, I just mentioned it was called, you do yoga asanas. You go for about 45 minutes, and because your body get all tight and tangled up going that deep in meditation, the release was very rapid, so.
Yeah. So, Jim, I'm gonna follow up with an interview. I'm going to interview you, and if you're open to it for the Awareness podcast, because I'm very interested in your time there, and I think we need to move on with the book study. But I'm definitely interested in what you have to share
Okay.
about that.
Yeah, got it.
Okay, so let's look at on page 15 as we continue on. He has a second point here. And in reconciling the spiritual and the worldly in one's life. And I think these are really important points. At the top of the page, he says, by proving, the first one was to look at the dream state and the waking state are the same. The second one is by proving that the objective world has no existence independently of the subject I or consciousness. And in that, my take is that you can't have an experience. An experience can't be had that you're not aware of. That where awareness isn't present. You can't have an experience where consciousness isn't cause, isn't holding the experience.
Yeah. I think, once you can reside in the pure consciousness or notice that that's what is, and everything else are the objects, and you less and less, you don't identify with the objects. Life in the relative world has all the objects, but being in the, and he calls it proving. Does he say that? Proving. By proving that the objective world has no existence, independent. And that's the whole thing. It's one way of proving it, just noticing the purity of the oneness that doesn't change, and everything else is changing, so.
Right. I don't know if you can get that statement if you're new to this understanding. I think one has to really have had a direct experience to understand how to prove it.
And all of this, that's why we're talking about pointers and recognizing you can't force it, you can't create it with your mind, but all these pointers and ways that each one of us will find our own way, and we'll fall into an awakening, brief or long, and then we have something to work with, and then all of this starts making sense, and but all of this is encouragement to do whatever you can. And so this is sort of just reading it, an approach of understanding, but at some point it slips into pure experience.
Yeah. There's a if you keep going, he says, to an ordinary man, life constitutes actions, perceptions, thoughts, and feelings. One of these alone being experienced at any given time. In other words, you stand detached from all activities, excepting the one in which you seem engaged at the given time. To this list of 4 categories, actions, perceptions, thoughts, and feelings, the spiritual man adds just one more, which indeed is the most important one: consciousness. This last one is doubly important because over and above its importance as a separate entity, it shines in and through the 4 categories already mentioned. You are simply asked to direct to the consciousness aspect the attention legitimately due to it. This is all. And so he's just inviting us to recognize in all perceptions, all actions, all phenomenal experience, all activity of the mind, move your attention to what is it that's aware of it.
Yeah. And he calls it, he used the word aspect, or separate entity. It's the one you might note. In fact, definitely you approach it like, well, he's talking about consciousness. What is this? What am I that is aware of all this, these objects? And I'm not any of that out there. I'm this. So it's a pointer to say that you might look for it as consciousness, but once you're residing in it, that is that is the I that he earlier refers to. And then it contains all of the objects. They're all passing. You're now residing in the non-changing.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So clear. He says that the presence and recognition of subjective consciousness, your real center, is the one thing needed to make your life possible and connected. Make it so by knowing that knowing principle to be your real center. So that knowing principle is awareness of experience. So just to bring it close, instead of saying, well, what does the knowing principle mean? Well, if you're, as you are aware of this experience, that awareness prior to a label or an object, that awareness is the real center that he's describing.
Right. Yeah, the knowing is continuous, is another word for the awareness or the experience of I.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. It's the knowing without a label or any characteristics.
And what I like, he goes on to say, you never go outside it and you can never leave it, even if you will, but this does not deny or negate your worldly life as it is ordinarily supposed, but makes it richer, firmer, truer, and more successful.
There it
And
is.
that's the beautiful next thing that happens. I think it's possible to just, when you just are like, maybe you've had a wow or a small wow, and I am pure consciousness. And then you have to sort of put it all back together. Well, he's saying that's normal. You do put it back together and you have all the experiences. In fact, that's the second part of it. And the mountain is the mountain once again. No, you go on, you chop wood, carry water,
Yes.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. That's the beautiful simplicity of the understanding, is that you can be yourself. It's just like that. One of the last book studies we did, the time book study before last, being yourself, being myself. That Rupert, he did that's just a wonderful book. But you can just be yourself. You can be established in the understanding as consciousness, as presence, and you can deal with your kids. You can deal with your bills. You can deal with your emotional upsets. And I don't mean deal with them.
Yeah.
They resolve.
Yeah.
They quietly resolve in this quiet presence that you discover that you are.
Yeah. He says, to have deep peace and not be disturbed from it, even for a moment, is the ardent desire of everyone. For this, you have necessarily to be at a center which does not change. That is the real I principle or consciousness, the center that does not change. To be, and I even circled the word be, it, and to establish oneself there is the end and aim of life. This alone makes real life possible. To be it. And we're already it. That's what we are being anyhow. But recognizing it and being there makes life rich and wonderful.
Nice. Wow, that last paragraph, man. That should be, if you could impart that to your kids after you've understood it for yourself, that would be the greatest gift you could give your children, I think.
Yeah. And I think that's what we give each other in sharing groups like this. We offer reinforcement and encouragement and sharing among ourselves as part of the process of normalizing and, making it livable and real and containing everything. Yeah. So we offer that to each other, just like we could offer it to our kids. Except my kids don't seem to, it's not automatic that a parent passes it on to child. No. Everybody has to discover it their own way.
I mean, my kids run from this stuff because, I started out raising them as Christians, and now they think I'm lost my mind.
Right.
Funny.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's turn to page 16. If there's any questions, I saw the question about that about the tree falling in the woods. But I think I got answered. How do you answer the old question, if a tree falls in the forest and no one hears it, does it make a sound? I don't know. I think something falls, it makes a vibrational, there's a vibrational frequency, and whether there's a set of ears to hear it, I'm sure that the vibration still happens. It's gravity, and it's going to have some kind of vibrational frequency attached to it.
Yeah, that's the way I've always answered that question in my mind. Well, the vibration is there. And you know what I just thought when I heard you saying that? The Zen koan, what is the sound of one hand clapping? Well, it's nothingness. Just like now I'm sort of working with this tree thing. Tree falls, doesn't make a sound. Well, the no sound of not an ear to hear it, interpret as sound, as a sound, is the no sound that we reside in. That once again, that's at the center, and then we contain everything. So
yeah. Somebody just mentioned two things that you just said, that's a Zen cone.
yeah.
Yeah.
What's
Yeah.
the sound of a tree falling in the forest if no one's there to hear it?
Right.
Yeah.
So looking at 29 on page 16, how can an ordinary man attain, or woman attain, renunciation?
When you are engaged in any action, thought, or activity, all the world except for that one activity is dead as far as you are concerned. And this one was very interesting for me. This can really be called vairagya, or detachment. To call it, so therefore you are always in perfect dispassion. And that again is the most natural and effortless manner. That was an amazing, I've never thought of it that way. That the fact that we're in our present experience, whatever we're engaged in, we're actually detached from everything else. And I had never thought of that as detachment, but he's using that as an example of dispassion or detachment in a natural and effortless manner. What an interesting thing to contemplate. But it seems to be true as soon as I think about it. We're here right now. The whole world is out there. Trees are falling down. We're not hearing them right now. So
right. Yeah. You're focused, and actually, even though you think you might multitask, you still can only do one thing at a time. You can only manage one thought at a time. You can only manage one thing at a time.
And manage must be a key word there, because it's all happening now. I mean, we can, if we pause and then go, oh yeah, I'm in a room, there's sounds, I'm thinking, I'm in this Zoom meeting. But in terms of engaging and managing and dealing with, like right now I'm talking and I'm pretty engaged with this, but the whole thing is happening. So am I detached from everything else? How interesting. Yeah.
Nice. Jude says that Master Eckhart says detachment is the highest virtue.
Yeah. And Meister Eckhart also says if you only can say one prayer, thank you, is sufficient. I like Meister Eckhart quite a bit.
Good one. Yeah, cool. How to attain Atma Tattva, or the truth of self.
Yeah,
How to attain this experience.
Yeah,
Jim?
It's not something to be imported or acquired. Boy, that's a good, you see, that's part of why all this is supposedly very difficult, because we try to acquire it when it's still a concept. But at the point where we sort of pass over or pop through or whatever it is, and then we realize that we are not, it says, but it already is. The real I principle is here. It's not anywhere else. It's not something we acquire. It's just we recognize or notice that is it. If you once, here it is, recognize it and turn to it earnestly, it begins to enlighten you and does not stop until you are led on to the very core of your being and are established there. And I think that's just beautiful, because I certainly agree. There seems to be a potentiality in life, who we are, what is happening, this pure consciousness and the I principle is pure potential. And the idea of grace is that when used in, who wants to use that word, the grace of it will help you find it. And you are it already. I am that. And so it's a beautiful potentiality. It's like factory installed. We're humans and we have this potential, and it's going to help us get there if we'll just have an earnest desire to be there.
That was so well put. It's factory installed. Yes, there it is.
Yeah.
And I having an earnest desire is, I think, is the key impulse that where recognition comes online that there's something here. There's something I need to know. There's something I don't know that this is going to help me. And there's a desire to know that is factory installed.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, great. Yeah, this is well, we actually did move through those 9 discourses very, very nicely, and had a nice discussion about different your background and some of the cool places you've been. I do look forward to having that conversation with you. And there was a lot of time, some questions about the tree falling in the forest, but there was another good question that says, early on, I think it was about right in the beginning of our meeting, that I wanted to pick back up on 12:15, I think it was. Let me look. Let's see. Let's see. Anything that can be seen, perceived, is not the seer or the perceiver. Yes. Thought it. Let me see if there's a. Yesterday, I was pondering this about deepen the thought. Then Francis Lucille showed on YouTube with mind can be the servant of truth. That wasn't it. I'm sorry. Could you speak of the changeless quality, please? Could you speak of the changeless quality? Jude, what do you mean by that question, Jude? Do you want to come on and ask that?
I'm sorry, Bill, I was typing. I didn't hear the question.
Pardon me?
I didn't hear your question.
It says, could you speak on the changeless quality?
Well, I think you have. Thank you, Jim. Repeatedly bringing it up as the constant changeless state that we are, the unalterable, the eternal, the immortal, the always present, the knowing awareness of everything. Yeah. And then, that coming back to where there's nothing in between what I'm aware of and what is not me. It used to be not me, a me and a not me. And then, like, I agree what you said, Bill, that it's like you have to have an experience of it and then you can come to understand it. It's like the understanding comes later. And I had an experience where I forgot how to speak. And when people called me Judy, I was looking at them going, who are you talking to? And I really was disassociated from this manifestation. And it took me a while just to remember how to have a normal conversation. And then reading books about what no self meant. I had to read books because I had no literal, training or education to help me to understand that. Yeah. But I recognized in retrospect how I had been experiencing that all through my life as a natural, normal way of being, just being it. I am that. I want everything and I want it now. I am everything.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. It sounds like what's called a spontaneous awakening, that you were into that awareness and understanding without relying on teachings or groups or belief systems. You were there.
Well, it wasn't that spontaneous. I came via a crash and burning down the ego house through, 12-step stuff, and
Okay.
started kindergarten, 12-step work, vigilantly though, and very earnestly, because I could see the ego so clearly.
Yeah.
It was so obviously a crash and burn failure. So the relinquishing of that, not believing anything I thought anymore, was crucial. Letting go of the I know thinking mind. Don't believe anything you think. I mean, all that was like really easy, came very easily and spontaneously. So someone else would like to share, I think.
I think that was beautiful, though. Thank you for describing that. Yeah.
I so enjoy all this. Thank you.
Yeah, that was good, Jude. And I think the 12-step program is, and I've said this many times, I just think it's a very powerful vehicle for people to begin their awakening.
Millions.
Million. Yes,
seen
I know. And
I've
it's
seen it.
so, it doesn't have the baggage, the religious baggage that's, that we used to be really suffering from, tormented by.
Love it.
Let's see. There was a question here. What does negative imports mean? That would be the negative imports is the negation of the objects of experience to establish. It's what Ramana sort of popularized, that I am that. By establishing I am not that, therefore I am that I am. So it's the negation of the objects of experience, negating that I am not that, I'm not that, I'm not that, I'm not that. I am that which is aware of those objects of experience. That is the negative import idea. And anything else? Any other questions, anyone, before we end our time together? You have anything else to add, Jim?
Just that I found this very enjoyable. And I think we all have our best wishes for each other to find our own unique door openers, and make what we're discussing here real as experience, that we become that which we're discussing here, because that's what we already are.
Yeah.
That's important to know. It's already here. That's what we are. Yeah.
Yeah. And also be gentle on yourself and your brothers and sisters here. This experience, be gentle on yourself for this experience. There may be times that things are said you don't agree with. Throw it away, just, dismiss it. Don't, and also allow the irritation, allow it to be felt, allow it to be seen, and then love it. Bring it into this experience that's aware of it, and allow it to be dissolved into the nothingness that it rises, because that irritation is a false identity that's trying to make itself real for you. So just allow any discomforts that happen here. And also, this can be a healing experience when you're abiding in the content of what's being offered. When you're abiding as awareness, if there's an irritation that's come up or something that's disturbing your peace, let it come into this open space of pure awareness and just allow it to be welcomed there. And that can be a healing experience for people. So I'm looking forward to having Jim on the Awareness Podcast. I'm going to contact you, Jim, and I'll follow up on that. I think it'd be fun to be able to point to that. And it's been so good to have everyone here today. And we'll look forward to having to look at our next content next week with, Jenny Sheehan. She's right here. She's going to be our co-host next week. And thank you all for being here. And we'll see you
Thank
then.
you.
Thank you, Jim, for being our co-host today.
Thank you very much.
Bye, everyone.